Okay, recording has started. Hey everybody, welcome back to BNS Working Group. It's been 2 weeks since the last meeting. So I think we should, I guess, catch up on where we are on things. There's been some announcements across the ecosystem with layer 1 names. And also, yeah, so I guess Hank, maybe you'd be a good person to start with, see what you've been working on.
Happy to. Yeah, I prepared a little demo of where I'm at the moment. So yeah, just intro is, this is related on the project of bringing BNS names to L1. And so allowing existing names to be basically bridged over to L1 as inscriptions. And then they can be used, transferred, sold, whatever. And then if the user wants to, they can also move back to L2 and claim the original BNS name. So I've got a huge chunk of the project done. So today I'll demo like my local environment. It's just like a local blockchain and everything. So nothing's live yet. But I've got sort of, the end-to-end flow going, so I can kind of just demo that. So cool. Let's see. I think I need permissions for the screen share.
Okay, I don't know how to do that. Let me see here. Oh, I think we turned those off because of people stealing it last time. Let me just
figure that. That makes sense.
Go ahead. You should be good now.
Yep. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. So we're looking at a local version of the Dots app. At the moment, this UI is, it's a little bit just kind of, me getting everything wired up before focusing on the more visual aspect of the design. So this is the page that you see when you want to move the name to L1. So I've got this name, Hank.Satoshi. .Satoshi is the namespace that I use for like local development. So the first step is to inscribe your name. So we give you this, short snippet that you can paste and download or use a service like Gamma to upload. And as you can see, this is actually HTML, and it's using technology called web components so that the actual inscription, when viewed, it's got a nice responsive visual appearance, but it's barely any more bytes than a very short text inscription. In fact, like a lot of the JSON ones, it's actually shorter. So you have nice low fees, but still the benefits of something visual. And I'll just open this. This is a little just like demo page that I've been using to kind of preview it in different aspect ratios and sizes. So you got some sort of like responsiveness, this visual element. Still relatively clean. It looks a lot like the BNS name kind of like previews that you might see on something like Gamma, but it's much, much smaller. So I've already inscribed it. I've got like a local ordinal server running locally using my local blockchain. This is like the source of it. So let me just copy this ID. Submit it. And then this is calling into the contract itself. So it's going to be moving the BNS name into this contract. I'll submit it. Cool. And so basically what happened here is the BNS name on Stacks was moved into this contract. And now the contract, as well as associated APIs, have this specific inscription ID associated with this name. So whether using this app or apps like Gamma, it's sort of like an official BNS inscription. So I'll show you now what it's like to move back. This is just showing the inscription ID. So the first step is to transfer the inscription. And so there's a deterministically generated burn address that's associated with your stacks address. So anytime you want to move one of your inscriptions to back to L2, you can use this unique Bitcoin address. And essentially, your stacks address is like encoded in this address itself. And so the stacks contract is like reconstructing the Bitcoin address associated with you in order to verify that, like, yes, this was burned with the intent of moving to your stacks address. So I'm going to copy this, and then off screen, I'm going to transfer the inscription to this address. 1 second to do something. Copy this. Wait. Oh, it's because just give me a second. It's because I killed the Ordinal server. It's just acting weird at the moment. Okay. Then I'm gonna restart the Ordinal server and it should work correctly. Yep, it's a read, figured out. So I've transferred it. Now I'm going to make sure I'm just going to have that transaction confirmed by mining a new block. And the web apps, sees the transfer, sees that it was moved. And so I need to make a stacked transaction now to claim the BNS name. In a moment, this should update in the top right, show that like the name is back in the stacks address. Yep. Boom. So now I own the stacks BNS name again. So go ahead and stop here.
Oh, that was crazy at the end. That's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is it the right time to put on my Ordinals hat?
Nice.
So in the first script there was a script tag, and it's pointing to like a inscription. Is that like a something that you inscribed that like is a JavaScript script?
Yeah, and it's not actually live yet. But that's correct. There's this technique that people are starting to use a lot now. I think it's called like recursive inscriptions, where you're referencing the source of another inscription from within an inscription, and you can't reference like externally hosted things. So yeah, that's how the inscription that you upload itself is like so small in terms of file size, but the end result is something that's much more dynamic. And so at the moment, it's still just like a static HTML view. There technically could be even interactivity added to it. Perhaps something like a view more type of thing where the card flips over and shows some details or something like that. And I'm really open to any ideas there to kind of make it more interesting, whether it's animated, things like that. Yeah.
How does the stacks node follow the ownership of the ordinal?
So this is described in the forum post, but for following the ownership, there's no method that's been found yet using Clarity to track that, because the kind of complexity of ordinal theory. So at the moment, there is basically like an Oracle server, and it's only attesting to like given an inscription ID, who the current owner is. And so it's like, kind of dumb in terms of like whether it knows whether something's a BNS inscription or anything. So it could be used for other contracts as well. But yeah, at the moment, that's how it works. It's, I think, certainly not ideal We obviously want to make this as trustless as possible, which is kind of like working within, the bounds of what's possible as far as I know. But any improvements here, I think like I would be completely supportive to make it more trustless across the board. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other questions people watching the video will ask them.
I may have missed it from previous meetings, but
go ahead, Mark.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm curious if we've gotten sort of feedback or run this by sort of folks outside the Stacks ecosystem, more in sort of ordinals land, working on domains, and if we've got their feedback, if we kind of know how they think about this, whether it seems like it fits with their way of looking at things or not.
It's a good question. Not in any very formal context. I mean, I think we also know that there's a lot of members of kind of ordinals land who would prefer a completely L1 based thing where like even for .btc that it's like minted on L1 and kind of conflicting with BNS state. So I think no matter what, there will be some pushback there from some individuals, but no, I'm really I really want to have those conversations. I think this also comes back to like how other than just like for trading, how it can be used. And so I'm working on APIs and other kind of like dev tooling so that hopefully in like Hero Wallet we can support sending BTC to an L1 based name where it would go to like the current owner of the inscription. I think things like that could help make it much more like, I don't know, legitimate is not the perfect word, but hopefully you know what I mean. Just more utility, more kind of use cases.
Yeah, no, I definitely recognize the sort of difficulty of pitching people on Bitcoin L2s right now in general, right? Stacks included. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge. Though one I think we need to, of course, lean into because we don't want to sort of stay here sort of in a different sort of realm of thinking and development and just throw stuff out and not have it sort of bridge the divide from a community point of view as well. And yeah, in the wallet, would love to support L1 based lookups in addition to L2 based lookups. I think those should have parity essentially. I think if this can help folks who have invested on one side or the other move them either from L1 to L2 or L2 to L1 and maintain functionality. So sort of base level functionality, like looking up for sending, but then gain other functionality based on where they want to move things to, then that seems like the right sort of general approach to me.
Yep.
Agree with what Mark said. But if you go back to like if you're just looking at it from an L1 perspective, like so I don't have a Stacks node. Like I'm interested in trading these. How do I know that like any one of these is actually like how do I know the provenance of this?
Yeah. First answer is that I'll be building like a very simple tool on dots to like look up an inscription or even browse kind of the list of bridge names. And then number two is working with marketplaces. So working with Gamma at the moment, they've been very supportive. We'll probably also update the UI that I just showed you to make it more easy to basically to plug into Gamma's API for their inscription service, where if you want to, obviously you don't have to. We'll just say like transfer X to this Bitcoin address, and then it'll get inscribed behind the scenes and kind of automatically all go. But yeah, that's how you verify.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just curious as to this. I mean, it's really a question of social response, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine people saying this is totally ridiculous. Like, we don't want to we want L1, and this people trying to shoehorn their L2 and back into our L1.
I think like,
I mean, if you
I
were,
think especially, go ahead.
okay. I was going to ask if you were like ignoring where we are now, if you were to like say like, okay, we want to have .BDC and L1 and L2, how would you approach it differently? I mean, that's that question where we are with other names that are on L1 now.
Mm. I mean, like if we could go back in time, or just like
yeah. I mean, just like from if we imagine totally greenfield, like I mean, theoretically, like what would you? I mean,
I think some way that
I guess it's more of a question of like like given we know we can put in inscriptions, we can put anything in inscriptions, and like how can we best use those from Stacks L2 or from any L2? I guess is probably the question in your experience so far.
I think finding a way to natively like register and modify like the core BNS contract state from L1 directly. So like, you know, some mechanism, like for example, you can transfer stacks by making a Bitcoin transaction, and stacks nodes are like set to watch, you know, for these specific transaction types. And then like it updates clarity or like stack state without actually like making a stacks transaction. And doing a mechanism like that for registration, transfers, you know, registering and payment in BTC, so that we just had like one unified state instead of like, you know, the system bolted in on top to kind of like mesh the two. That seems, you know, most ideal to me and kind of gives you the best of both worlds.
I mean, it seems like I think this is a great like currently now like doable solution. It sounds like probably the best that we can get, but it seems like that Stacks nodes really need to add support for ordinals is like that's like I mean, it really needs, I mean, I think, I don't know, I guess I've also been a little bit oversold to this. Like when I first heard, oh, well, don't worry, it all has a Bitcoin node, you can read it. I didn't realize, oh, it only can read it can only read the Bitcoin, like a very small part of the Bitcoin block, right? It can't like doesn't have read write access to the entire or read access to the entire block, right?
Well, I mean, you know, through proofs it does, but it, you know, certainly can't do something as complex as indexing all sets, you know. And so I think native clarity functions, at the least, such as get owner of inscription by ID, would be, you know, really amazing for this, or get the content of an inscription. So you know, if you needed to verify the content of something, that would make it all very like very nice, completely non-custodial, trustless, etc.
Any thoughts, Don?
Yeah, I think this is great. I think given that where the technology is today and everything that we've talked about thus far, I think that the solution that you've designed now, Hank, is, you know, there's obviously going to be some tweaks, but it's pretty elegant given what you're doing, in my opinion. I'm curious about now having this where it is. Obviously, there's still some debate going on within the community. What's the next steps in your mind? Are you looking to bring this to a little bit broader audience to get a little bit more feedback on it? And what do you think are the next steps?
Yeah, one of the hangups was getting this on testnet, because there's a Stacks testnet and a Bitcoin testnet that's all wired up and everything. But I've had trouble finding a way to set up an ordinals testnet environment without having to run my own testnet node and testnet ordinal server. Like even just from a disk and hosting space, it's complicated. But I believe Gamma actually has an environment that they've set up, and I'm not sure that it's completely public, but so I think that's a potential solution to sort of get this live and like see, you know, what just get it in the hands of more people, you know, more than just like this demo. And I think I'll also update the forum post with screenshots and, you know, maybe screen recording. We'll also have this video. just to kind of like, I don't know, let people see it as easily as possible without having to like set up a test net, this and that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess where I am right now is I think that I think that we've seen. I mean, there's definite benefits to L2, or you can do stuff, right? Like it's just really the problem we're running on with L1 is the same problem we've always had with Bitcoin. Is it's very complicated to develop anything. And I think going forward there's going to be room for both. If we add more functionality for, it's just easier. Like looking at like L1 names, L2 names, it's just like a couple order of magnitudes easier to add to make an L2 name do something than it is to make the L1 name do something. And I think that makes this promising, right? It's also kind of just, it feels kind of silly that like, let's move these L2 names to L1 so people can trade them, which is exactly the opposite of what you'd think you'd want to do.
I think, yeah, but the best argument is because you can use native Bitcoin so easily on L1. And even with SBTC, that'll like make the experience much better, but it's still not as clean as just, listed for pure Bitcoin, get paid for Bitcoin, no having to move back and forth. Yeah.
Cool, it makes sense.
I mean, this is going to be iterative over time as the technology changes and stuff. And I feel that what I'm hearing is you're thinking ahead of some of these things, Hank, in your approach, which is great. Larry, as you mentioned, as we get more utility on L1, this type of solution may not be as important as it is to us today for some of these L1 to transfer over, right? But as the next phase of this development, I think it's great.
Thank you.
Cool. We're running up to our 10, or it should be 11 p.m. Time here. So I'll post the video tomorrow, because it takes a few hours to process for in code, and then you can post it on the forum. I guess I'll add it to the bottom of your thread.
Thank you. That's perfect. Anybody watching, reach out from Discord or on the forum. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feedback, critical, positive, whatever.
Cool. Thanks so much, Hank. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Larry.
Cool.
Yeah, no problem. Bye-bye.
Bye.